Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the mystery of the moon in Gemini, part 2. Many of you may have remembered, people that have persistently followed my videos know I did one about the mystery of the moon in Gemini some time ago, and I answered a question regarding it. As far as why it may come out stronger in terms of how its influence it may exert on the chart, perhaps more so than the other moon signs. But in this one, I want to talk mainly about the question that was asked, and it may have been rhetorical when it was asked, but if the case that it wasn't, or for those that aren't sure of this, I'm going to try to answer this. Now, there was a book that was written some time ago. It's a classic novel. I mean, a novel, but astrology book, and it's really it transcends time. It was the Secrets of a Stargazer's Notebook by Debbie. I think it's Debbie Kempton Smith was the name of the person that wrote it. You might want to verify that, but in the Moon in Gemini description, at the end of it, it's written, something is written like, this moon, something about the moon placement giving a expanding curiosity on how others live their lives, and it said something like, well, why are they so cagey about telling you the minutia of theirs? Well, that has actually been stated. I mean, it's been stated, that same general statement. I've seen that actually in other books, as astrology books as well, about the moon in Gemini being very voluble, very loquacious regarding worldly, global matters and things connected with the news, but they're very private regard. I mean, really very, reserved regarding their own personal matters. Well, the answer I would give to that, I believe, I'm going to tell you what my theory is as far as that goes, speaking firsthand, moon Gemini person myself. It has to do with the closeness, the lack of ability to really want to be really close. I think it plays a role with that. I'm going to elaborate and expound on that. The thing about it is, when you're talking about the moon astrology, the moon I see as being could be connected with people, prominent in your life, people that you're close to home with, people that you feel comfortable with. And the thing about it is, when you have Gemini energy with that, Gemini could be rather superficial, and they could be like that in their connections, even those that they feel close to home with. Now, if you have the moon in Gemini, well, you could do the math. It can be where there's something where you may not feel, even the people you feel close to home with, you might be at some disconnection from them to some degree. You might keep them a little bit at a distance, more so than the other moon signs. There's a book written entitled The Rising Sign, is written by Jean Avery. She talked about Gemini rising, but I believe it can apply to the Sun and Moon in Gemini. Something about the closeness freedom syndrome. So I forgot the exact words, but what it is, they talk about, well, Gemini can be somewhat detached. And I think because you have that superficial energy, what happens is when you have the moon, when you have it in the moon in Gemini, it's something where you might have an unconscious, maybe on an unconscious level, you might need to keep people at it, even the people close to home with, at a little bit of a distance from you. If the moon in Gemini is going to divulge or reveal anything too personal, that could be an indicator of to that moon Gemini person that they're trying to get close to someone, or they feel the other person may perceive that as some form of closeness, and the moon in Gemini may be reluctant to do so. So I think that is, I would say at least that is one of the reasons why the moon in Gemini in general can be very reluctant to divulge or disclose things of a personal nature regarding themselves. And I do think that's what it really is strongly connected with, because again, Gemini energy can be rather superficial. It's not really about really deep connections. And the thing is, if the moon in Gemini person is going to reveal personal things to somebody, it's going to be, it could be construed or perceived by the person that the Moon Gemini person wants to get closer to the person, and Moon Gemini was often reluctant to do so because that's going to be what the person, that's the fear I think that Moon Gemini can go through, if that makes any sense, if that you understand what I'm saying. And they're afraid that other person, the receiving end, is going to take that as well. You're going to be, you're trying to get closer to me more than, say, a friendship level. So I think that is one of the, that has something to do with why Moon Gemini is reluctant to divulge personal things about his or herself. And I want to expound a little bit on the other, the first part of the mystery of the Moon in Gemini. I was talking about why does it have, why does the Moon Gemini can have can have a dominant effect on the person? Why does it perhaps exert more influence on the personality, maybe even more so than the other moon signs? Well, I could jokingly, say that the Gemini might be Gemini's inhabiting. Or two people inhabit Gemini, actually. Two personalities inhabit Gemini. Well, I'm being flippant, of course. Again, as I stated in the first video about this, I think a lot of it depends a lot, especially if you're a person that's reactionary, more responsive than action. The Moon can be reactionary about our responses. And if Moon and Gemini, sometimes asked a question or is something is stated to them when they respond, sometimes it could be very loquacious, rambling answer. You might feel like you're getting a 2-hour dissertation from a Moon and Gemini, and a lot of times those answers can be so long, I believe, that it doesn't always allow a lot of that other energy to come up for air, so to speak. I can remember when legendary golfer Jack Nicklaus was in some interview or something, or he was asked a question, and he has a Moon in Gemini, and he went on, he rambled for so long. He actually made a joke about himself afterwards, some self-deprecating humor. He said, "I talked so much I forgot what the question was." So that's part of the reason. Somebody made a good point about the Moon in Gemini, is that what it is. He didn't say that was this wasn't about this person expressing why the Moon Gemini could come out strong in a person's chart, but he was talking about how the Moon and Gemini person might be dropping relationships really quickly because they don't they basically can drop a connection in a heartbeat, even a close connection. Something about it where he referred to the Moon and Gemini energy being, you're having call it the fastest moving planet. I guess what he's referring to is as far as the transits through the signs go, and along with the fastest moving sign. But when he told me that, I thought about that, and I wonder if that could be maybe another reason why the Moon in Gemini might stand out, because you're talking about emotional versatility, and there's so many manifold expressions of emotions and feelings with the Moon in Gemini that it might stand out a little bit more than the other moon signs. So those are some things I'm looking at as far as the mystery of the Moon in Gemini Part 2 goes, and I think it's just really very interesting. I think there's just some things about the Moon in Gemini why it may come out stronger than, as far as exerting the influence on the personality more so than perhaps the other moon signs. It might be something that we may not know 100%, but in this video I offered some thoughts on that. So those are some things that I believe that are connected with this the mystery Moon Gemini. Answered and it talked about beginning of the video, of course, about why Moon in Gemini might feel just basically about why they could be so, again, so reluctant and apprehensive to reveal too many close things regarding themselves. And then, of course, second part, I elaborate a little bit more on the first mystery of the Moon in Gemini video. So, and also somebody told me that maybe it stand that they had a theory as to maybe the reason it might stand out. It's not just the loquacious energy of the moon in Gemini, but it's because you're talking about the planet of the sign strongly connected with intellect with the planet of emotion, and it just doesn't really fit. And maybe for that reason it might come out and stand out a little bit more than the other moon signs. So I guess that could be another reason. So, and also, I mean, if you have the moon in Gemini, especially if you got it in an angular house, or especially the first house like I have, it could stand out even more. Or say if it's unaspected in your chart, that could actually, in those rare isolated cases, it might stand out kind of alone, and it might come out a little bit stronger, more, and might be more prevalent and figure more prominently in your chart. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the mystery of the moon in Gemini part 2. And until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.